Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. Here's how she took the news. Roll it.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, you know, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I think it's great for our children to know this information. I guess it's a fact of life that this is how some people made their living, on the backs of others.
Fact of life. Interesting change of tune. For more, we go to our chief Sunny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
Welcome back to AllStarBuzz. Thank you for joining us. Before we start, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We are on our way to 10,000 subscribers. Now, let's begin. It all started with a surprising twist on the PBS show Finding Your Roots, where celebrities discover unexpected truths about their ancestry. One of the latest guests was The View co-host Sunny Hostin, known for her strong opinions on race, justice, and social issues. But what she uncovered about her family's past left not only her, but audiences everywhere stunned.
Well, first, I just want to go on the record to let everyone know that I am very much against slavery. Very brave to say that on this panel. You know, karma, definitely. I mean, it's one thing. It's going to be so awkward on, you know, new episodes of The View when she tries to pull the race card.
Yes.
And then she's like, America is racist. And then they're like, yeah, they might be racist, but they're not like slave owner racist. like somebody that we...
That's so true.
You know?
She could have maybe done better. Okay, here's the thing. One thing, and I would have even actually not give her any, is she said, well, like, I guess that's just what, like, they did back then.
Yeah.
She should have followed that up with saying something along the lines of, and I understand that that's a departure from the way I've talked about this before. That was, like, to me, the one thing that was missing.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, okay, now that you have this information, have you had any personal growth? Do you think about things differently? You have to acknowledge that. Yeah. Because when you're presented with new information, it's okay to change your mind. It's good to change your mind, but you should acknowledge that that has happened.
If she is shaming descendants of this, will she continue to do that when she is now one of them, Dana? And it is funny. She's so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
Well, now we understand why she always makes Whoopi get the coffee. I don't know. That's not true.
That's not true.
But you think about things that she said and how offensive they are.
Yeah.
Well, karma.
Yeah, it is karma.
For years, Sunny identified proudly as half Puerto Rican, carrying with her a narrative of marginalization and heritage tied to colonial struggle. But when the researchers traced her lineage back even further, they uncovered something she never imagined. Her ancestors weren't just from Spain, they were actually slaveholders. The expression on her face as she processed this revelation said more than words ever could. The moment was raw, real, and emotional. It clashed with the public persona Sunny had built over the years and instantly set off a wave of conversation both online and in the media. What would this mean for her message, her values, and how she addresses America's complicated past moving forward? Let's keep going.
She could have maybe done better. Okay, here's the thing. One thing, and I would have even actually not give her any is she said, well, like, I guess that's just what they did back then.
Yeah.
She should have followed that up with saying something along the lines of, and I understand that that's a departure from the way I've talked about this before. That was like, to me, the one thing that was missing.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, okay, now that you have this information, have you had any personal growth? Do you think about things differently? You have to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Because when you're presented with new information, it's okay to change your mind. It's good to change your mind, but you should acknowledge that has happened.
Exactly, because if she is shaming descendants of this, will she continue to do that when she is now one of them, Dana? And it is funny. She's so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
Well, now we understand why she always makes Whoopi get the coffee.
Sunny's unexpected family history didn't just shock her, it lit a firestorm of reactions across the internet. And it wasn't long before one of her most vocal critics, Greg Gutfeld, seized the moment. Known for his sharp tongue and unfiltered commentary on The Five, Gutfeld didn't hold back. He launched into a scathing monologue, taking direct aim at what he saw as glaring hypocrisy. Sunny has built much of her public platform around discussions of systemic racism, often calling out America's past and present failures. But now, faced with the fact that her own ancestors were involved in slavery, her usual stance was suddenly turned on its head, and Gutfeld made sure to underline the irony. According to him, this wasn't just an awkward discovery, it was a revelation that exposed a contradiction at the core of Sunny's public narrative. In his critique, Gutfeld didn't just question Sunny's reaction, he went deeper. He asked how someone so outspoken about injustice could now seem so passive when the past hit close to home. The target of his commentary wasn't just Sunny's ancestry, it was the way she processed it. And in that contrast, Gutfeld saw something worth calling out. Gutfeld's takedown wasn't just about facts, it was about tone, and he zeroed in on what he saw as Sunny's dismissiveness. When faced with the news that her ancestor owned at least one enslaved person, Sunny responded by saying, "I guess it's a fact of life. That's how some people made their living." To Gutfeld, that wasn't just a weak response, it was a complete dodge.
That's not what I read. The true sign of the apocalypse is someone that dumb has a law degree. Worse, if your name has the word sun in it, there's no excuse for not knowing how an eclipse works. But it's no surprise that Joy is the one who understands science. She's been on the science diet for years. They're turning on me. So that makes Sunny Hostin, who thinks climate change caused the solar eclipse, the dumbest of them all. Because everyone knows the moon caused the eclipse, which is controlled by the view's gravitational pull. All right, Kat, did you ever see such a group? It's amazing how Joy and Whoopi became the smart ones.
Oh, so you know what? Whoopi, she thought like either the Nazis thought the Jews were a race or were in a race. I'm not sure what she thought. And I thought, this new one was Sunny, pretty dumb. And then Joey Behar in her own echo chamber. I'm going to say the dumbest people who still watch the show.
Yes.
The whole audience clapped by the
studio audience.
Yeah.
Whoopi, though.
She's funny, right?
No.
Oh, okay. I was trying to find some kind of redeeming thing to say about The View. You could see right through me.
Well, at least Joy and Whoopi were fact-checking this time around. That was surprising, a pleasant one.
Yeah, it was. We won't be seeing. Is shaming descendants of this, will she continue to do that when she is now one of them, Dana? And it is funny. She's so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
For me, the most shocking thing about the conversation was how truly boring it was. They're like, well, the cicadas, they're cicadas. Okay, but it was like every 100 years. No, it's every 17 years. Do you know how many Emmys this show has? 31.
31 Emmys.
This show has 31. I mean, I'd hate to see the conversations that don't make headlines. What?
And we don't have a single
Not a
Emmy.
single
You don't
one.
Have what does that tell you about the Emmys, Kat? Yes, thank you, Mr. Boo. Give that man a free cup of water. Charlie,
In his view, someone who frequently holds others to account for historical injustices should be equally willing to confront their own family's role in that history. But instead of reflecting or even apologizing, Sunny's reaction came across at least to critics as indifferent. He argued that if Sunny had discovered this about someone else, she likely would have demanded a public reckoning, but when it came to her own past, she didn't show the same energy. That inconsistency became the centerpiece of Gutfeld's commentary. He believed this moment wasn't just about ancestry, was about accountability.
I know, right? I mean, I have to say, Karen Dupiche, our wonderful, one of our wonderful makeup artists, when the earthquake was happening, she put her coat on and she was like, Jesus is coming.
I'm out.
I'm out. I'm leaving. We've got a solar eclipse. We've got the earthquake. She ran down the hallway.
their brains are small. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sunny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now, The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't.
And to many viewers, Sunny's lack of self-awareness spoke volumes. They saw someone who had been quick to judge others now struggling to judge herself. And that, Gutfeld claimed, was the real problem. As Gutfeld continued, he made a point that hit even harder. What happens now? Will Sunny Hostin, who so often speaks about systemic racism and the legacy of oppression, start applying that same scrutiny to her own story? Or will she sidestep it completely? He imagined future episodes of The View where Sunny might once again accuse America of being fundamentally racist. But this time, Gutfeld quipped. Someone could turn to her and say, "Sure, but not slave owner racist like your great-great-great-grandfather." It was a brutal line, but one that reflected a larger question. Can someone who has built a brand around moral authority continue doing so when their own history clashes with that stance? To Gutfeld and many of his viewers, Sunny's credibility took a major hit. He emphasized that people have the right to change their minds when presented with new information, but that requires acknowledgement and growth, not deflection. And that, in his eyes, was what Sunny failed to do. The conversation was no longer just about her ancestry. It was about whether someone who champions social justice couture would hold herself to the same standard she expects of others. Gutfeld didn't stop there. He dove deeper into the heart of the matter: acknowledgement versus avoidance. He argued that this moment could have been an opportunity for Sunny to show humility, to reflect publicly, and maybe even evolve her perspective. But instead, he said, she brushed it off with a generic, "That's just how it was back then." To him, that wasn't just a weak excuse, it was a missed chance for personal growth. Gutfeld highlighted how, when new truths are uncovered, the real test isn't just in discovering them, but in how we respond. Do we own up to uncomfortable facts? Or do we quietly sweep them aside because they're inconvenient to our narrative? He pushed further, asking, if Sunny has spent years criticizing people who are descendants of slaveholders or beneficiaries of historical injustice, will she now continue to do so knowing she is one of them? This wasn't about cancel culture or shaming her. Gutfeld insisted it was about consistency. He claimed that when someone is so wrapped up in identity politics, they owe it to themselves and their audience to confront all aspects of their identity, even the uncomfortable ones, especially those. From there, Gutfeld turned to what he called the core irony of the situation. Sunny Hostin, a figure deeply immersed in conversations about race, privilege, and identity, apparently didn't even know her own full identity. He pointed out how often Sunny speaks in absolutes, labeling systems, people, or even entire communities as complicit in historical wrongs. And yet, when her own family's involvement in slavery was revealed, her response wasn't a call for introspection, it was more like a shrug. To Gutfeld, that disconnect revealed something bigger. He joked that maybe now we know why she makes Whoopi get the coffee a line meant to sting, but also to highlight how someone so vocal about injustice might overlook how those dynamics play out even in their own circles. The jab may have been exaggerated, but it carried a message. Self-awareness matters. This moment, he argued, exposed the danger of being so focused on external narratives that you fail to examine your own. For someone who constantly demands accountability from others, Sunny seemed startlingly unwilling or unprepared to apply that lens inward. And that, Gutfeld believed, was the clearest sign of all that something needed to change. Gutfeld's commentary struck a chord not just because of its sharp delivery, but because it reflected what many viewers were already thinking. The question he raised was simple. Now that Sunny knows this about her past, will her message change her? Will she just pretend it doesn't matter? He mocked her shocked reaction, then contrasted it with the lack of real emotional depth in how she addressed the news. If anything, she seemed more uncomfortable than reflective. And for someone who routinely lectures others on the weight of history and the importance of acknowledging past wrongs, that struck many as tone-deaf. Gutfeld asked the pointed question: will Sunny now reconsider her constant lectures about systemic racism and oppression? He suggested that if she truly believes in accountability, then that belief should extend to herself as well. Otherwise, it's just performative outrage. The audience reaction was swift and intense. Clips of the moment started circulating online almost instantly. Viewers took to social media to call out what they saw as a glaring double standard one that made Sunny's typical commentary feel suddenly hollow. For Gutfeld, it wasn't just a mic drop moment, it was a reflection of what happens when rhetoric collides with reality. As the clips continued to spread, so did the commentary. Social media lit up with reactions, some amused, others outraged. But a common theme emerged. Many people saw this as a textbook case of double standards. Viewers pointed out how Sunny often calls out others for not reckoning with their pasts, yet seemed strangely casual about her own. One viral comment read, "Sunny Hostin learning her ancestors were slaveholders is the plot twist we didn't see coming but Greg Gutfeld's reaction? Absolute gold." Another added, "Her hypocrisy finally caught up with her, and Gutfeld nailed it." But not everyone was on board with the backlash. Sunny's defenders argued she was simply processing a surprising and painful revelation in real time. They said it wasn't fair to expect an immediate, polished response to something so deeply personal. They called the criticism excessive and lacking empathy. Still, to many, the issue wasn't just about being surprised, it was about how she handled it. The tone, the lack of reflection, and the quick pivot to "that's just how life was back then" didn't sit well with critics. The moment became bigger than Sunny. It became a flashpoint in a broader debate about how we handle inconvenient truths. Gutfeld's takedown, while centered on Sunny, opened the door to a much larger conversation about identity politics, selective outrage, and personal responsibility. He wasn't just criticizing her for being caught off guard by her ancestry. He was highlighting a pattern he sees in public discourse: people who weaponize identity when it suits them, but retreat into silence when that identity becomes complicated. He argued that this kind of selective accountability undermines real progress. If people only speak out when the narrative flatters them and ignore the parts that don't, it creates a hollow version of activism. Gutfeld's critique wasn't just about Sunny's moment of irony, it was about what that moment represents. He reminded viewers that none of us are immune to the weight of history. Every family has chapters that are uncomfortable. But what matters is how we confront those truths. Do we own them, learn from them, and grow? Or do we deflect and move on, hoping no one asks follow-up questions? For Gutfeld, Sunny chose the latter. And in doing so, she missed a chance to show the very accountability she often demands from others. That, he argued, is what made this story so telling and so relevant to today's culture wars. In the end, the clash between Greg Gutfeld and Sunny Hostin became more than just a viral moment. It turned into a symbol of the cultural divide we're seeing everywhere today. On one side, there are those who believe in confronting all parts of history, no matter how uncomfortable. On the other are those who intentionally or not pick and choose which truths to spotlight based on convenience. Gutfeld's sharp critique of Sunny wasn't just about a DNA result, it was about the broader issue of credibility. Can someone be a trusted voice in national conversations about race and justice if they refuse to apply those same principles inward? To many viewers, this was the question that stuck. The backlash, the memes, the heated comment sections, they all point to a deeper tension in today's discourse, the expectation that public figures live up to the values they promote. And when they don't, people notice, quickly. So, was Gutfeld right to call her out? Or was Sunny simply caught in a deeply human moment of surprise and discomfort? Either way, the moment pulled back the curtain on how complex, messy, and personal these public conversations about race and history can really be. Thanks for watching. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. See you on the next one.